Hey, it's NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Andrew Limbong. In comic book fandom and other related circles, there's this term called women in refrigerators. It refers to the trope of using a woman's gruesome death as a plot device to drive the male main character forward. This idea is something the novelist Cristina Rivera Garza upends in her novel La Muerte me da. Now, that book was written in 2007, but she's since translated it with the title Death Takes Me. So now it's available in English for the first time. She talks to NPR's A. Martinez about revisiting a work more than a decade later and thinking about what has changed and what hasn't. That's ahead.
This message comes from Charles Schwab. When it comes to managing your wealth, Schwab gives you more choices, like full-service wealth management and advice when you need it. You can also invest on your own and trade on Thinkorswim. Visit schwab.com to learn more. This message comes from Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Books by Mexican author and professor Cristina Rivera Garza tend to defy expectation and genre. In 2020, Rivera Garza was named a MacArthur Genius Fellow. 4 years later, in 2024, her book Liliana's Invincible Summer won the Pulitzer Prize for memoir or autobiography. Her latest is a translation of the 2007 novel La Muerte me da, or Death Takes Me. Cristina Rivera Garza joined us to talk about this novel, the work of translation, and the power of words. So, Cristina, tell us about the storyline in La Muerte me da, now called Death Takes Me. What's the storyline about?
Well, this is apparently a simple question, and yet, since this novel is veering away from a plot-based narrative, it may be a bit complicated. There is a detective, a woman detective, who finds herself suddenly in charge of a very gruesome, enigmatic series of killings against men in a city that is plagued by violence.
Why is it important that all the victims are men? And actually, in the story, all the men are sexually mutilated. So why is that important in this case?
It has to do with the context in which I wrote this novel. I was living in Mexico for a while, and as everybody else, I was being bombarded by news of violence related to the misnamed war on drugs. I had to confront, like everybody else in Mexico, daily gruesome scenes of killings and murders, specifically about the killing of women, of poor young women, specifically located on the U.S.-Mexico border in Ciudad Juarez. And so I was trying to think through this violence to see what language could do against this violence. So I decided to make the male body the recipient of this violence in order to see if we could pay closer attention.
Yeah. When things happen to men, all of a sudden men are worried. Men care when it's happening to them.
We live in societies that have high tolerance for the suffering of women. And that has invited the perpetuation of violence against women. To me, it was really important to swap these places, to see that even though in Spanish the word victim is always feminine, is la víctima. Yeah. So what do we do when we're faced with this violence that is perpetrated specifically against men for sexual reasons, right? My bet was that we would be paying a little bit more of attention, and I wanted that attention on the novel, but also on the reality that was causing that violence.
Yeah. I knew it before, Cristina, but when you said it again, that, in Spanish, victim is in the feminine, víctima. It just kind of blows me away that that's the default, right, in Spanish for victim.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I pay a lot of attention in this novel. I would say that the protagonist of this novel is language as such. There is a grammar of violence. The way in which we speak, the way in which we name has bearings on reality, has consequences. And thinking about the gendered nature of both language and urban space was really important for me in the writing of the novel.
So tell us about that translation process, because I'm fascinated by this, Cristina, in that the novel published in 2007, how often since 2007 did you think about the book? Because writers, artists, I think sometimes have trouble letting go of their work because they feel maybe it's never finished the way exactly they want it to finish. So when you were thinking about translating, did you think, well, maybe I could tweak this, add this, subtract this?
I have done that with other books, by the way. In this case, since the context hasn't varied much, I mean, violence continues to be a feature of daily life, both in Mexico and the Americas in general. So I've been thinking about that. I've been having to rethink and revise my own views and my own experience with violence. And for that reason, I think that this is the best moment for the book to be translated into English. I think it has something to say, not only about what was happening in Mexico in 2007, but about what we are going through right now in 2025. When we began to talk about the translation, I was very happy that Sarah Booker and Robin Myers were in charge of this project.
Yeah. Now, Liliana's Invincible Summer, that's a book celebrating the life of your sister, Liliana, who was murdered in 1990. Now, in it, you go back to Mexico City years later to document her case. That book, Cristina, you translated that one yourself. I'm wondering why you made that decision to do that one alone.
Well, in fact, I don't see that as a translation as such. It was quite different. I caught myself, in fact, writing this book both in English and in Spanish at the same time in different days,
Really?
depending on issues that I'm still trying to figure out. The way in which I explain that process now, having gone through it, is that I was dealing with a matter of such magnitude emotionally for me that I needed English as a protection, as a buffer to tell a story of facts that had taken place in a different language.
So you went back and forth, really, English and Spanish, different days?
Every day, yes.
Wow.
At some days I would start in Spanish, and then without warning or even a conscious decision on my side, I would start some other days in English. And so what I did, instead of correcting me, trying to do things as I usually do them, what I decided was to follow that process and to see where it would take me. And so what I would do the next day was to use the opposite language to kind of revise what I had written the day before. And so the relationship between English and Spanish here was way more intricate, and it varied on daily basis. But in this case, at least personally, I have a lot to think about the relationship between mourning, between grieving, and between pain, generally speaking, and bilingualism, and living in a different language, and how this so-called second language or this other language might provide you with opportunities and freedoms that the language that you grew up with could not afford.
That is Cristina Rivera Garza. Her novel is called Death Takes Me. Cristina, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Support for NPR and the following message come from IXL Online. Is your child asking questions on their homework you don't feel equipped to answer? IXL Learning uses advanced algorithms to give the right help to each kid, no matter the age or personality. One subscription gets you everything. One site for all the kids in your home, pre-K to 12th grade. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And NPR listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/NPR. Support for the following message comes from LinkedIn Ads. As a B2B marketer, you know how noisy the digital ad space can be. If your message isn't targeted to the right audience, it just disappears into the noise. By using LinkedIn Ads, you can reach professionals who are more likely to find your ad relevant. Target them by job title, industry, company, and more. Get a $100 credit on your next campaign at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.